Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us these excerpts from The Case of the Beautiful Blonde Spy. And what struck me immediately is how, well, the reality of espionage during World War I is just so much more intricate and frankly surprising than any spy thriller you might pick up.
Absolutely. Forget the glamorous cliches for a moment.
Right. We're plunging into the true story of Madame Maria de Victorica, who was a highly effective German agent.
A really significant player.
So our mission today is to understand how this seemingly elusive operative was finally uncovered. We want to focus on the unexpected twists, and the sheer ingenuity involved in bringing her down.
Indeed. Madame Maria de Victorica, and she also went by names like Marie de Veussière, she was a major concern for British intelligence, really starting back in 1914.
Wow, that early.
Yeah. Her reputation was one of, daring and considerable danger. But interestingly, it wasn't some classic tale of agent meeting agent that led to her exposure.
Yeah.
No. Instead, as our sources detail, it was the work of MI8's Secret Ink Bureau. Kind of an unassuming department, really, that ultimately proved to be her undoing.
MI8. Remind us.
That was the British Directorate of Military Intelligence, the ones responsible for signals intelligence, code breaking, that sort of thing. The ink people, basically.
Okay, the ink people. So the initial thread that eventually unraveled Victorica's network, it began with info the British shared with American authorities in November 1917.
Right.
This tip pointed to a German agent who was supposed to deliver a pretty substantial sum, $10,000, to either an AC Fellows in Hoboken, New Jersey, or a K. Lamb out in Woodside, Long Island.
But here's the thing.
What's striking is by the time this intelligence actually reached American shores, both Fellows and Lamb had seemingly vanished. Just gone.
Exactly. Which naturally meant those addresses were immediately placed under surveillance.
Makes sense.
It's worth noting the sort of delayed nature of intelligence work back then. This initial piece of information, while crucial, didn't directly implicate Victorica herself.
Right, not yet.
But it kicked off a sequence of events. About 2 months later, so January 1918, a letter addressed to this Fellows was intercepted.
Okay.
It had been mailed in New York, but interestingly, it carried a Madrid postmark dated November 3rd, 1917, just 2 days before that initial British warning came through.
And this letter, it initially looked like a dead end, didn't it? The chemists in the Secret Ink Bureau, they checked it meticulously for hidden writing.
And found nothing. Zip, nada.
That must have been, pretty discouraging, especially for a relatively new unit just kind of finding its feet.
Precisely. It really underscores the often frustrating, painstaking nature of this kind of analysis. But then, just 4 days later, another letter addressed to Fellows arrived.
Okay.
And this one immediately set off alarm bells. This second letter, it became known as the Maud letter because of how it was signed off.
Maud, okay.
It had a return address for a D. Crane in New York, but it started with the greeting, "Dear Mrs. Gerhardt."
Wait, Dear Mrs. Gerhardt, but addressed to Fellows.
Exactly. The discrepancies. The intended recipient, the return address, the salutation, they were immediate red flags. Big ones.
It's remarkable how such, seemingly small inconsistencies can just trigger a whole cascade of investigations. Our source mentions that even the normal language in these letters could carry hidden meanings.
Absolutely. Like, illness might mean an agent was being watched.
Right, and recovery could mean they'd slip surveillance. It's like a whole secret language hidden in plain sight.
Exactly, which highlights how critical it was for analysts to look beyond just the words on the page, consider coded language, spy protocols. So the chemist, sensing something was really off with this second letter, promptly asked about this D. Crane at the return address. And that opened up a whole new line of inquiry.
And that inquiry turned out to be pretty significant.
Very.
The address, 932E 108th Street, turned out it was a rooming house, and guess what? No one named D. Crane lived there.
Of course not.
But they did find a steward named Allison who worked on the SS Christianfjord, a ship out nearby. He lived there.
Right. And under questioning, Allison revealed this. Rather improbable story.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does. Allison explained that just before his ship left Christiania in Norway, some porter gave him 2 letters to smuggle into the U.S. and mail in New York.
Okay, 2 letters.
One was addressed to Fellows, our guy under surveillance. The other was for a Mrs. Hugo Gerhardt at an address on West 96th Street.
Mrs. Gerhardt, the name from the salutation.
Bingo. Allison claimed the original envelopes were damaged, so he readdressed them himself. And he used the alias Crane and his own rooming house number as the return address.
Okay, seems plausible enough, maybe a bit clumsy.
But here's where it gets really unbelievable. The kind of coincidence you just couldn't make up.
What happened?
In his clumsy re-enveloping, Allison accidentally switched the letters.
No.
Yes. The letter actually meant for fellows, went to Mrs. Gerhardt, and it was never recovered, probably thrown out.
And the letter meant for Mrs. Gerhardt.
Ended up going to fellows, and, crucially, was intercepted by intelligence.
Wow. Talk about a pivotal and incredibly unlucky for Victorica mistake. Pure chance.
It's such a powerful reminder, isn't it? Even the most complex spy operations can be tripped up by simple human error, by just randomness.
Totally.
So, with this mod letter now in their hands, the Secret Ink Bureau went back to work, renewed effort, and this time
They found something.
they did. After a couple of tries with the standard chemicals failed, the third attempt revealed faint traces of invisible writing.
Finally. And was it significant?
Oh yeah, it wasn't just any secret writing, it was identified as F ink, a known German type, and the script was German.
Okay, now they're getting somewhere.
But developing the entire message was incredibly delicate, really time-consuming work. Took the chemists all night. They had to be super careful not to damage the paper, in case they needed to re-examine it later.
Like forensic science, but for letters.
Pretty much. And while they were doing this meticulous work, the agent who'd first flagged the letter made another key observation.
What was that?
He remembered the salutation. Dear Mrs. Gerhardt. That little detail, combined with the address mix-up, just cemented their belief that this letter held something really important.
And those secrets, once they were fully revealed and translated, they're pretty alarming, weren't they?
Alarming is putting it mildly.
Yeah.
The secret writing in the mod letter. First, it confirmed a previous message, number 7 from October.
Okay.
Then it laid out instructions for the recipient, who they now knew should have been Mrs. Gerhardt, to ramp up spy activities in South America, specifically focusing on investing resources in sabotaging war industries, docks, navigation.
Sabotage.
Yeah, big time. There was even a specific recommendation to destroy quicksilver mines.
Yow!
Yeah.
The scope of this is pretty wide.
It really shows the ambition of the German espionage effort. The instructions emphasized hitting dock facilities because the U.S. was cranking up its shipbuilding program.
Makes sense.
But they were warned to do it secretly. No obvious connection between the agent's firm and shipbuilding. And there was even a suggestion to use Irish sympathizers to carry out the actual bombings.
Leveraging existing tensions. Clever, in a sinister way.
The letter also covered the money side, how funds would flow through remittances, credit lines in South American banks. Interestingly, it ordered a temporary halt to business, as they called it, in Argentina. But it highlighted Brazil as a good place to invest.
Brazil? Wasn't Brazil about to declare war on Germany?
Exactly. Brazil had just declared war, which makes that instruction even more significant. Mexico, on the other hand, was deemed too politically messy for their goals. Germany wanted to keep Mexico neutral for other reasons.
Right, the Zimmerman telegram fiasco wasn't that long before this.
Good point. And crucially, the letter stressed the urgent need for a neutral cover address for cables. Ideally American, but definitely not German-American.
They needed secure communication.
Desperately. It even gave a simple code. Cancel order. Buy. Advise selling, each meaning something specific about the situation.
But the biggest bombshell.
Yeah. The biggest bombshell was the implication that the intended recipient, Mrs. Gerhardt, was the central figure, the guiding genius behind all the German sabotage involving explosions in the U.S. and South America.
So not just a spy, but the spy coordinating this whole bombing campaign.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
The letter even ordered the creation of a second, totally independent firm as a backup, just in case the first one got rolled up. It shows how organized, how layered this network was.
That discovery must have sent shockwaves through American counter-espionage.
Oh, absolutely. Despite arresting lots of agents, pouring resources into fighting German intelligence, they suddenly realized this key orchestrator, this mastermind, was still out there, still active.
And the focus immediately shifted to Mrs. Hugo Gerhardt, the woman who should have received that letter.
Full attention. But tracking her down wasn't easy either.
Why not?
Investigators found out she'd moved. And that misaddressed letter meant for fellows. Her old landlady had just thrown it away. Gone.
Oh, man. Another dead end.
Almost. But further digging revealed something interesting. Mrs. Gerhardt had apparently received several strange letters that weren't actually for her.
Okay.
And some of those letters mentioned the name, Victorica.
Victorica. There it is. The link.
The critical link. That single name prompted an immediate cable to British intelligence.
And what did the British say?
Their response was fast and frankly game-changing. They dug up an old cable from their files way back from February 1917, and this old cable linked the name Victorica to a New York firm, Schmidt and Holtz.
Okay, a tangible connection.
And once they cracked Victorica's own secret code, which is a whole other story detailed elsewhere in the source, they could read this whole cable. It instructed her to withdraw a huge sum of money, $35,000 from her bank account, because war with the U.S. looked imminent.
35 grand in 1917, that's a fortune. Really shows her importance.
Definitely, and Schmidt and Holtz confirmed it. They had paid Madame Victorica exactly that amount in cash on February 20th, 1917. At the time, she gave her address as the Foreign Mission, 46 High Street, and used letters of introduction and her passport for ID.
Okay, so they have an address, a description.
Yep. Travel records showed she came from Berlin to New York in January 1917, using an Argentine passport she got in Christiania. Her bankers described her as a stunning blonde, about 35 years of age.
And the British?
The British confirmed their suspicion. Believe Victorica to be a beautiful blonde woman of Antwerp for whom we have searched since 1914.
The one they'd been hunting for years.
And to top it off, French intelligence reported they'd arrested her husband, Manuel Gustave Victorica, also an Argentine citizen, for espionage in France. The net was tightening.
So investigators zeroed in on the Foreign Mission, 46 High Street, the address she gave the bankers.
Right. They managed to surreptitiously obtain several letters addressed to her there.
But she was probably long gone.
It looked that way. She seemed to have cut ties. The letters were old, over a year old, some of them. No postmarks. Likely smuggled in.
Still, maybe they held clues.
They did. Analyzing these older letters still gave them valuable and pretty chilling information. One from Christiania, February 17, mentioned previous messages. A wire transfer, asked about the market, probably her spying activities. It had secret ink, but it was too decomposed to fully translate. Another letter, March 7, 1917, mentioned her safe arrival, the manager's delight, hinting she'd succeeded at something early on. It also asked about her husband. They were clearly worried after his capture.
But the secret writing, what did it say?
Okay, the secret writing in that March 7th letter was huge. First, instructions to immediately secure the $35,000 she'd just withdrawn.
Right, the big payout.
It gave her cover addresses in Holland, Sweden, Denmark, new code keys. And then, this is disturbing, it asked for intel on spots along the U.S. coast, New York down to Cape Hatteras.
For what?
For sinking material sacks for U-boats or sailing vessels. Shallow water, no currents. It strongly suggested early planning for hidden submarine resupply points right on the U.S. coast.
Submarine bases. Wow, this is serious stuff.
Extremely serious. This letter, remember, written just after Germany, declared unrestricted submarine warfare. It explicitly lays out a plan to support those U-boats operating near America.
Unbelievable. What else? The
secret writing also revealed plans to put agents onto English warships posing as workers and offered huge rewards. $1 million is at service for blowing up dreadnoughts.
$1 million?
Seemingly. It even detailed how to hide explosives like tetra inside lead pencil sticks.
Okay, that's elaborate, but wait, there was more, right? The religious artifact.
Yes, maybe the most audacious plan. The letter detailed this incredibly elaborate scheme to import high explosives, specifically tetra.
Wow.
Concealed inside religious figures, an altar specifically. 3 figures, 4 columns, precise dimensions given, Renaissance Baroque style, rural painting. The detail is amazing.
An altar full of explosives.
To be ordered via cable by a trustworthy priest from an export company in Zurich.
Why a priest? Why a cable?
It was a clever way to bypass the British naval blockade and censorship. Who would suspect a shipment of religious items ordered by a priest?
That is diabolical ingenuity.
And the next letter, March 22nd, 1917, confirmed they liked her secret ink work, mentioned it was improving. It also made a blunder, mentioning Kalium iodatum, accidentally revealing the chemical reagent.
Ha! A slip-up.
A small one, yeah. It also mentioned another key German spy, cousin Oscar, heading to Brazil. And the secret ink, partially deciphered, hinted again at plans for agents on American warships and even targeting the Panama Canal.
The Panama Canal. And this was all before the U.S. even declared war.
Exactly. Before the U.S. was officially in the fight.
So, just piecing this all together, these letters showed Victorica's mission was massive. Sabotage, spying in Brazil, setting up U-boat support, infiltrating warships, hitting the Panama Canal, smuggling explosives and altars.
It's a chilling list. And the Maud letter, the one Allison makes up, confirmed she was central to coordinating a lot of this and that they needed a backup plan if she failed.
That $35,000 really hammers home how important they thought she was. But the big question was still, where was she? She'd gone underground.
Right. Tracking her after she cut ties was tough. But investigators painstakingly pieced together her movements through upscale hotels in New York.
Where'd she stay?
Hotel Knickerbocker, when she arrived in January 17. Checked out abruptly right around when the U.S. cut diplomatic ties with Germany.
Okay, makes sense.
Then the Waldorf Astoria. Disappeared from there shortly after a suspected German saboteur, Dynamite Charlie Winnenberg, was arrested.
She was spooked?
Seems likely. Finally, she rented a very expensive apartment at the Spencer Arms, but left suddenly in early March, even though she'd paid rent through June. Severed contact with her bankers, the foreign mission, vanished. Assumed a new identity.
She was good at disappearing, but she made one crucial mistake.
She underestimated the secret ink laboratory, or rather the information they uncovered.
You cover addresses.
Exactly. Those addresses, revealed in the secret writing, including ones in the U.S., ultimately led investigators to her. They started watching people connected to those addresses in New York.
And that surveillance led them where?
Eventually, it led them to observe a young girl making regular weekly visits to St. Patrick's Cathedral, usually late in the afternoon, around dusk.
St. Patrick's seems an odd place for espionage.
Maybe not. This seemingly small detail turned out to be the vital clue. On April 16, 1918, agents watched the girl go into the cathedral and leave a newspaper in pew 30.
A newspaper drop. Classic.
Classic. Moments later, a stooped man came in carrying his own newspaper, went to the pew, and swapped them.
Okay,
The man then took a taxi, kind of roundabout route to Penn Station, got a train to Long Beach, Long Island, then another taxi to the Nassau Hotel.
Getting closer.
Before going into the hotel, the man left his newspaper on a lounge chair in the lobby.
Another drop.
Seems so. Shortly after, Madame Victorica, the beautiful blonde woman, Marie de Voussière, appeared. She left the newspaper she was carrying, picked up the one the man had left, and went straight to the elevator.
They had her. And the newspaper.
The seemingly innocuous newspaper contained a staggering sum, $21,000 in cash, smuggled from the German minister von Eckhardt.
Wow. So Madame Victorica, the elusive spy, finally identified.
Identified and located. She was arrested 11 days later, April 27, 1918, right there at the Hotel Nassau on a presidential warrant.
What did they find when they arrested her?
Among her things, the tools of her trade. Ball-pointed pens and silk scarves that had been impregnated with that distinctive F secret ink proof.
In her reaction, did she confess?
Not at first. During interrogation, she was clever. Feigned total ignorance. Claimed she was just in the U.S. to remarry. Tried to downplay her money.
But they had the evidence.
They had irrefutable documentary evidence. When confronted with it, she completely broke down. Collapsed, actually, and had to be hospitalized.
It's a tragic end, in a way.
It is. The immense strain of her double life. The constant fear. It had clearly taken a massive toll. It came out she'd become addicted to drugs.
So what happened to her legally?
She was indicted on charges of conspiracy, but she was never actually brought to trial. Her health likely deteriorated rapidly. She died in prison custody on August 12, 1920.
Just vanished from history almost?
Buried quietly in Kensico, New York. In the end, her downfall wasn't some dramatic raid or brilliant detective work in the traditional sense.
No, it was.
It was this remarkable combination of, well, sheer chance, that accidental swapping of the letters by Allison, coupled with the persistent, meticulous, and ultimately ingenious work of that often overlooked secret ink section of MI8.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what really stands out are those surprising aha moments, right? The absolutely crucial role of that secret ink.
Absolutely critical.
The way seemingly random minor details like a misaddressed letter or a name mentioned in passing eventually connected all the dots. And just the sheer audacity of her plans using holy figures to smuggle explosives.
It really underscores how, even in this huge global conflict, that meticulous attention to detail, combined sometimes with just a bit of unexpected luck, can unravel even the most elaborate schemes.
Yeah.
And it also makes you think about the human side of it all. The incredible psychological pressure, the constant need for deception, the profound personal cost for everyone involved, spies and counter-spies alike.
It certainly does. And it leaves us maybe with a final thought for you, the listener. Given how much communication technology has exploded since World War I, what are the modern equivalents of secret inks?
Right. What unforeseen vulnerabilities, what unexpected digital coincidences might shape the future of spying and counter-spying in ways we can't even really imagine yet.
It's a hidden world out there, constantly evolving. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.